My name is Marie Couch. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect here at HVR. I work with prospects and customers to help them solve their need to get real-time data in their environment. And so we'll talk a little bit about real-time data. So in today's presentation, I'm going to start out by talking about what is the market shift in going to data being in real time. What is the impact that you get by having data in real time? Of course, these sorts of principles are always more meaningful when you have a real life example. So I'm going to talk about what one of our customers did to solve particular problems they were having using HVR to get that data into Azure in real time. And then we'll focus a little bit more about HVR specifically. Why HVR? What is, how is it that the technology works? And we'll spend some time focusing on that SAP data as well. So moving to the market shift. So real-time data is a critical component of digital transformation strategies. So according to Gartner, more than half of organizations have said that they need better data for making business decisions. The data needs to be fresher. They need a 360-degree view of their business. It's no longer enough for them to be getting data from their operational sources into data warehouses or operational data stores only once or twice a day. So to remain competitive, to be able to react quickly and respond quickly to the data, they need it streamed continuously so they can keep track of changing conditions in their environment. So what is it that's standing in the way of an organization realizing that full data potential? So traditionally, data has been offloaded from these transactional operational sources to a data warehouse or operational data store for reporting and queries. Might be only once a day using batch type ETL processes. They're reading the source tables themselves. So it ends up being having your data be hours or even a day old, and it makes it of much less value. Also, over the years, organizations, either through acquisitions of other companies or simply through the development of many different applications in their organization, they end up having their data scattered across many different databases. So all of these disparate data sources, types, and targets, it results in the data being siloed. So it can only be accessed and harnessed by the team that owns that particular system. And in many cases, other teams are not even aware of the data, let alone of the value it could give them in understanding that bigger view of the business. So then lastly, data volumes are exploding, whether it's from traditional database sources, IoT devices, streaming sources. The volume that organizations are generating has increased exponentially, and they need the ability to move these large volumes of data quickly and securely to somewhere where it can be analyzed and sliced and diced and queried. And so if they're using that traditional ETL model, scraping the source tables themselves, those batch processes are not only giving the data less, not very frequently, but it takes longer for them to run and has a higher impact on the transactional operational sources. So companies are seeing that need to move from the batch model towards more one that delivers the data in real time. But the catch is that you need a solution that can accomplish this with low impact to operational sources. They don't want anything else affecting their production application. It also needs to be secure, both in transit and at rest, with HIPAA requirements, with all of the security considerations we're seeing with banks and financial institutions. It is very important that that data is secure all the way between the source and the target. And then third, those high volumes of data, it needs to be available on whatever their target environment is with very low latency. Otherwise, you lose the value of it in terms of being able to analyze it. So with HVR and with log-based change data capture, this is really where all of those requirements can be met, because only incremental changes are captured and integrated. So high volumes of data, that you can capture them efficiently and non-intrusively. Okay, so we kind of talked a little bit, what is real time? What impacts are you getting by having your data in real time? So this challenge around the need for real-time data is universal. It's across all industries. So we've supported many different types of use cases to give customers those data insights. So we have one it's a global fashion retailer, and they had been seeing exponential growth across the globe in their environments, but their existing on-premise infrastructure couldn't meet those expansion requirements, and they were seeing that the same thing that I was talking about, that higher impacts on the source and longer batch run times. So they came to HVR, and they're using it to capture data from their primary Oracle database on-prem into an Azure SQL server target. And what it does is it gives them some operational dashboards and reports. They have a supplier portal, and it's just made them much more nimble to be able to meet those real-time needs. In addition, there's another healthcare organization I was working with recently talking about the volumes of change data. So they generate more than 160 gigabytes of change data an hour. But so clearly they don't want to be having users running queries on that data on the operational source. So HVR captures, is able to read through that volume of change data, getting the data that is relevant for them into an Azure Data Lake store and to Snowflake and Azure for their reporting and kind of analytical needs. And the list really goes on across many different industries. So how does HVR help? What do we do? So HVR provides real-time data integration across a variety of heterogeneous on-prem and cloud sources and targets. So many topologies, whether it's one-to-one, one-to-many, where you're doing a capture once, distribute many, or even bidirectional multi-master. So with that same change data, log-based change data capture capability, we're able to then support those different topologies so that the organization has that single source of truth, that 360-degree view of the data, and it can be available continuously with the low latency that they need. So let's talk about an actual customer use case. So Kiewit has been a long-time HVR customer. They're in the construction, engineering, and mining industry. And so when they originally came to HVR, they wanted to move away from running their batch extracts. They were doing it twice a day against that operational source. But as their data volumes had grown, the batch cycles were taking longer and longer, and that impact on the production source was too high. So they really wanted to be able to provide that data rather as the traditional batch reports twice a day. They wanted it to become a self-service data portal via Tableau. So their sources were across a multitude of Oracle. They had Oracle SAP ECC. They had a number of SQL Server sources, and they wanted to consolidate and be able to get that data into both a Teradata data warehouse and into an Azure Data Lake. So looking at their architecture, you can see that with that capture once, distribute many, HVR is able to then gather that data in near real time from those multitude of sources and then put it out again to multiple targets. Azure Data Lake having a longer retention, we were able to then take source operations that would be constantly changing and keep the history of that in the data lake, as well as the Teradata data warehouse, which would give them more of that ability to quickly run SQL queries directly on the data warehouse itself. So that gave them a number of different results that they weren't even knowing they were looking for at the beginning. So, they were getting better on-time delivery performance. The financial reporting was more fresh, and they're getting that more quickly and able to respond more quickly to the customer demands. And in fact, Kiewit, having been really just happy with that initial implementation, has continued to look at expanding their use of the Azure ecosystem by looking at Azure Event Hub and Azure Databricks, using HVR to stream data into both of those targets as well. Okay, so we've talked about the need for real-time data, but why specifically HVR? So data integration is all we do. We have a laser focus on this as a company. Our goal is to be best of breed in this space. So our team is comprised of veterans with many years of experience in the data integration space. And, we feel very fortunate that this has been recognized by inclusion in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, being awarded Data Integrator of the Year with the Data Breakthrough Award, and being included in the Deloitte Fast 500. But more importantly, we have hundreds of customers who rely on HVR to move their mission-critical data and be able to rely on that data where they're doing the analytics and making business decisions on it in whatever target platform they're integrating it to. So I'm going to switch gears for a minute. I'm going to focus specifically on SAP data. And the reason we're going to do this is, as customers look to capture data from legacy source environments, invariably SAP comes into the conversation. Most of HVR's customers are replicating from SAP in some form. It might be SAP ECC running on Oracle, SQL Server, DB2. It might be from an SAP HANA source. And with SAP systems touching 77% of the world's revenue, HVR recognizes we need to be able to understand the specific considerations that we find in SAP environments and be able to integrate from those sources into the heterogeneous targets that customers want to use. So SAP has some very unique things about it. So HVR has developed certain capabilities to support those particular SAP kinds of characteristics and to unlock that SAP data. So some of the SAP structures contain tables within tables called pool and cluster tables. So in order to understand that data, you need to be able to decode it and make sense of it then on the other side. And we have some transformation capabilities that can do that. Now, it's not common to have a log-based capture out of SAP sources, and we're able to do that from really all of those SAP types of sources, whether it's Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, and HANA. And so we always are having, as part of that conversation with our SAP customers and prospects, the impact on the source. Every customer is concerned about, for my log-based change data capture, what kind of impact will it have on my source environment? And this is specifically very true for SAP customers. So we, in our architecture, the way that it's designed with that log-based change data capture is very non-intrusive. We're not going through the application layer unless we need, that it's being asked to. So we're always looking at the lowest impact, most efficient, and the highest performing. So now we've been talking at a very high level. What are the problems that customers are facing? What are the challenges around getting it? So let's look at then, how does HVR address those concerns and the ability to get data in near real time? So this is a diagram of HVR's architecture, but it's a very generic architecture slide. So the thing to kind of keep in mind is that our architecture is very modular and flexible, and depending on a customer's particular environment, what's their use case, their sources and targets, is it on-prem or in the cloud, what are their latency goals, we can make recommendations around how we're going to configure the various HVR components. Are we going to run with an agent or agentless? Are we going to put the components on-prem or in the cloud? So we're able to then be able to meet their latency goals as well as looking at their other considerations in their operational environment. So as we've been talking about, our primary bread and butter is that log-based change data capture and integration. But with an integrated solution, you're going to need some other components to really support it. You need to be able to instantiate a target. Let's say it's coming from Oracle going into Azure SQL. You need it to be able to create those tables on the target based on the structure of the source, automatically doing the data type mapping, maybe doing some light transformation of the data on the fly, adding an integrate timestamp, turning a source physical delete into a soft delete on the target, all of that as it's streaming the data across. Once the data is instantiated, those same transformation rules can be applied as you're doing the ongoing change data capture and integration. Most of our customers choose to run HVR in near real time with very low latency, but we also have the ability to stagger the capture or the integration. Many of our Snowflake customers in Azure, for example, will have their integrate running with periodic cycles every 5 minutes or 15 minutes in order to make the best use of that target cloud resource. So it's very flexible how it is configured. And then thirdly, there's another component to HVR, which is the data validation piece. Now, we consider this a really important feature of our solution. You know, having been in the data integration space for 20 years, invariably, customers would come to me and they'd say, look, my data is going across, I'm not getting any errors, but my end user and my management want me to demonstrate that the source and target are in fact in sync because they're relying on that data for making business decisions. They want to know they can trust that data. Now, for many of the other solutions I've worked with in the past, there really wasn't a great answer. You could do row counts or checksums. But with HVR's data validation capabilities, we can actually look at the source and target data, even if the source is actively changing and it's heterogeneous and you've done some mapping, and tell you if the source and target are in sync or not. Then, not only can we tell you exactly what is different, HVR can repair the target data if you want it to. So really important capability in that whole stack there. All right, so we've talked now about, what is it that we're doing. Let's look a little bit at what are the platforms that are supported by HVR. You can see that on the left of those sources, on the right for the targets, a number of traditional relational databases, some file source and targets, some streaming and cloud sources and targets. As customers, we really see that trend of them going from on-prem to cloud. We have added a lot more cloud targets like Azure SQL Server, Azure Data Lake, Snowflake on Azure, Event Hub, or Databricks. And we're constantly increasing the platforms that we support and expanding them as we see demand from customers and really see the market going. We have the ability, if we don't yet natively support a source or target, to leverage some custom code so it'll be very quickly able to support sources and targets, and then we try to move very quickly where our customers are going with those platforms. So as I've talked about, customers are really going to be looking for a comprehensive solution. So with that data integration and the need for real-time data, Of course, change data capture is at the heart of it, but they'll need that a complete solution which does the instantiation, which can track metadata changes from the source, replicate them in real time to the target, be able to validate the data periodically so that the organization knows they can trust the data. And then you also need, really, once everything is configured and running, something that's a lights out solution that you don't need to babysit. So integrated into the all-in-one box solution is monitoring and alerts that can be tracking the ongoing change data and capture and replication to report back any, have I had any errors or warnings, or even any latency threshold that's been exceeded. So all of that really then integrated into the product. All right, so at a high level, that's really kind of your introduction to HVR and where it fits in organizations' needs for real-time data. Very happy to have had you with us here today. If you would like additional information and you'd like to have someone from HVR contact you, there's an email address there right there, info@hvrsoftware.com. Please mention AngelBeat. We'd love to know where you found out about HVR. And then we also offer a test drive that you can see HVR's data replication solution for yourself. And there's a URL for that as well.